Welcome to this workshop. We are going to reflect on your progress and make plans to improve your speaking in 2018. Hello guys, welcome back to the English with Kim YouTube channel. I'm so excited to welcome you into 2018 and I'm so excited to talk about this topic. As many of you know, I love reflecting on how far we've come in order to set goals and move forward towards making more progress in the future. This is one of my favorite topics, and as you'll see in the presentation, I have definitely got a lot to say about the topic because I've really been working on setting better habits, breaking things down into more manageable tasks, and really being able to set achievable goals that will help you make much more progress forward. I'll tell you a little bit about my story with habit setting as we go through the presentation, but I just want to encourage you, if you're not watching this in real time, this is January 2018, you can still start this anytime. This process is good anytime you want to reflect on how far you've come and make changes in order to make even more progress going forward. So for those of you who are watching live, please be sure to say hello in the live chat. I'm going to go through a presentation, share a couple of insights that I like to share about my theories on goal setting and my theories on what you need to do in order to make progress. And then we're going to have a section where we can reflect together. So I have a couple of questions to ask you and we'll get into it there, but I'm just excited to get started with this presentation. I think this is a topic that not enough people pay attention to. I think it's very easy in today's world with the internet and all this technology to get overwhelmed by everything that is possible, but then not actually act. And so this goal of this presentation and the other resources I'm going to share is really to help you focus on your goals, your needs in order to improve your speaking. These techniques are possible even if you're not trying to improve your speaking, but because my specialty is helping you improve your speaking, I want to specifically focus on that because that will help us stay focused as well. So thank you guys so much for joining me. So let's start reflecting on your progress and talk about making plans for 2018. So hey there, once again, I'm Kim and I'm your guide to the essential conversation skills you need to sound more natural in English. And who might you be? Be sure to let me know in the chat, and if you're watching the replay, let me know in the comments below. So are you ready to get better results this year? So truth be told, each year I love opening my brand new planner and starting over on a fresh page. Actually, I love my planner this year, even though it's the one weekend, and I'm just really excited to think about everything that's possible in this new year. Even though many of my goals and desires carry over from one year to the next, I always get a burst of energy at the beginning of January, as well as at the beginning of summer and the start of the school year, which in the United States is in September. So I feel like I generally check in January, and then I check in as the summer begins, maybe late May or early June, and then in September, I think about it again because we tend to really get motivated with the new school year when all the kids are going back to school. So I would encourage you to think about when you get a burst of energy and let me know in the chat. When do you feel most motivated to start fresh with your goals and to reevaluate what's working for you? So in years past, I created this long, impossible list of dreams without getting specific about how I could actually get here. And I've probably spent, I'm going to say, a couple of decades, maybe 10 or 15 years living this way. And I was kind of disappointed because I would look at my lists year after year and I would realize that I still hadn't done the things that I wanted to do. And so I had to be more strategic about how to actually accomplish it. So if you feel like you relate to this, don't worry, we all do it. But as I get older, I am finally getting wiser. There is some truth to the fact that the older you get, the more wise you get. I've changed how I operate over the past 3 or 4 years, and probably since about 2014, I've gotten really good at better habits, better routines, and making really big changes to how I live my life. So that's part of the reason I show up here on the YouTube channel. So now I focus my attention on building momentum with small, achievable goals. I I really, really want to emphasize this point: small, achievable goals and the fact that we build momentum. By breaking my plans into manageable steps, things that I can actually do, I end up making so much more progress over the course of a whole year. Stacking up a series of wins keeps me so much more motivated. And if you ever have felt discouraged about your speaking skills, about any goal, but specifically about your English speaking skills, you probably want to focus on how can you stack up these series of wins? How can you stay motivated? By building momentum with small goals. It's very easy to get distracted by the big picture and not focus so much on these small, manageable goals you can actually achieve. So I want to talk about why setting quarterly goals works. While deciding on your end goal is necessary, right? These big, large goals that seem that they're a little bit distant, you need to know where you're going so that you know when you actually get there, right? You have to have some sort of goal to know what you're working towards. Well, while deciding on your end goal is necessary, it doesn't necessarily make sense to plan a year in advance. And this is why at the beginning of the year, we set these goals for what we're going to achieve over the course of the year. And it is a really good idea to think about what you want to achieve by the end of the year, how you want to start in 2019. It does make sense to even look 5 or 10 years in the future, but we have to be honest. So much can change over the course of the year. You may start a new job, you may have a health issue, you may lose motivation, you may have a breakup in a relationship, you may have some sort of thing that's really fun that takes all of your time, you may start a new hobby. There's all kinds of things that can change your goals and change your progress towards your goals. Or it may simply be that achieving your goal may take longer than you expected. I find this again and again, that what I think is achievable in 1 year may take 2 years, maybe even 3 or 4 years. So you have to be able to reflect on this and realize that just because it's not achieved in a year, it just means that it's something that needs a little more time. So over the past few years, I've started being more realistic about how much I could actually do in 1 year. I heard a quote by a man named Tony Robbins. Well, I don't think Tony Robbins said it, but I heard him say it on a documentary where people tend to overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in a lifetime or in 10 years or even in 3 years. We tend to really put a lot of pressure on 1 year where we can actually achieve a lot more if we give ourselves more time over 5 years. And you'll see what I mean as we talk about this. So I started setting quarterly goals to give myself enough time to get things done. And I just really, really want to reiterate that. By setting quarterly goals and making them much smaller, I gave myself enough time to get things done. When we set a goal that's maybe a monthly goal or even a couple of weekly goals, it feels harder to actually achieve it. So I have a resource on this. We're going to talk a little bit about this in just a moment, but I already have a complete workshop on this called Find Focus and Improve Your English More Quickly. I'm here to encourage you to do the same thing. Because learning a language requires you to strengthen so many different skills, it's so easy to get overwhelmed by everything you want to work on. But when you set clear goals for yourself, you can safely ignore anything that doesn't move you towards them. And so when you set these clear goals over the course of 3 months, 90 days for yourself, you're going to make so much more progress over the entire year. It's when you have this incredibly vague goal for 1 year that you don't make enough progress. So I encourage you to definitely check out my video called Find Focus and Improve Your English More Quickly. You're going to find it on the links below the video and also in the cards so that you'll be able to just go there directly after this live stream. But I just want you to really think about how you can break your big goal into something that's achievable in 90 days. And the reason that this is so important is they say it takes like 40 days or so to really make a better habit. And we're going to talk about habits in just a moment. So when you focus on 90 days, you're much more likely to achieve what you set out to do in 90 days rather than 1 month. In 1 month, things can happen that you don't plan for. But in 90 days, you can usually readjust and replan the exact way that you're going to go towards your goals. So let's talk about why momentum matters. Like I said, it's really important to build a habit over the course of a certain amount of time. When you focus specifically on one English skill for 90 days, you're going to build momentum. And this is why I totally encourage you to focus. If we're going to talk about speaking today, focus on your speaking for 90 days. Don't get distracted by your listening, by your writing, by your reading, by your vocabulary, by your grammar. I could name a million different things. Focus on your speaking. And if we're talking speaking, I talk about conversation skills, and I talk about pronunciation and accent reduction, and I would even pick one of those and focus even more. You need to build that momentum, just like this train that's going forwards. You see transformation happening, and it encourages you to keep moving forward. After 3 months, you may find you need more time to achieve your goal, or you may be ready to move on to something else. And by committing for just 1 quarter, 3 months, you discover what you're truly able to achieve during this period of time. This helps you make better decisions going forward and adjust your plans as needed. But if you're not sure how much you can actually do in 90 days, I encourage you to just try thinking about 90-day plans. That way you can see how much is actually possible for you. And something that I haven't mentioned specifically here, but that is true, is that when you build momentum, you're able to add other goals to your plan. So that's something that I've learned a lot about over the past few years. It's called habit stacking. When you have one good goal, one good set of habits and routines over the course of a shorter period of time, then you can add others on. But most of us try to change everything in just 1 year. We change everything about our lives. Our lives are going to be completely different, right? And same thing with your English skills. You're saying, I'm going to be completely fluent in 1 year, even though you don't really have a specific plan to get there. This is overwhelming, right? I'm going to improve my reading, writing, speaking, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, accent, I don't even know, conversation skills. I'm going to talk with native speakers all the time. That's too much, but you can eventually build up to that. You just don't want to start there. So I just want to really encourage you to keep that in mind. Before you make plans for this year, you need to reflect on your progress last year. Let's talk about why that's important. So as we get started with 2018, I encourage you to reflect on 2017 if you haven't already. Remember, you can do this anytime. This is just because of the live video is at the beginning of 2018, but you can do this at any time during the year. Anytime you want to reflect, and you should actually probably come back to it as much as possible. Reflection is huge for making progress on your goals. So you want to celebrate your wins, let go of goals that no longer fit. This is key, and decide where you want to spend your attention this year. When you take time to reflect, you'll probably be surprised by how much progress you made. And for starters, you probably have managed to accomplish much more than you recognize on a daily basis. This is really important to understand. On the day-to-day, we don't really notice our progress because it's smaller than this entire goal that you can kind of count up at the end of the year. Day-to-day progress seems a lot slower, but when you compare 1 year to another, you probably are going to be amazed at how much you accomplished. When you're working towards a goal, you might lose sight of these small but significant improvements. As I often say, small steps lead to big progress. I'll repeat that. Small steps lead to big progress. It's amazing how much small steps lead you towards big progress. You probably have gotten so much closer to your goals, even if you haven't yet achieved them. And that's something I want you to recognize as well. So this is worth celebrating, and we will talk about that in a moment. Beyond that, you may actually realize that goals that once seemed so important have been completely discarded in favor of new ones, or they've become more specific. There's all kinds of reasons you may change your goals. We are always redefining what truly matters right now in the present moment. So it's important to maybe let go of some goals, which we'll also talk about in just a moment. If you haven't achieved a goal, especially a big goal that seems hard to imagine right now, remember that you just probably underestimated how much time you truly needed to achieve it. When you're developing a skill like learning a language, you need to be patient with yourself. Just because you haven't achieved your ultimate goal yet, it doesn't mean you won't. You will achieve your goal if you really want it and you work towards it. So I often tell my clients, you don't know what you don't know. And this is really true, not just with language learning, improving your accent, improving your speaking skills. It's true in your life. You don't know what you don't know. It can feel like you're constantly uncovering more aspects of your accent to refine, or more situations where you need stronger communication skills, or topics where your vocabulary is limited. You're always going to find something else you can do. And you know what? Even as an educator and professional communicator, I do too. Even as a native English speaker, I still find ways I can communicate better. This is how it goes. So this is why I encourage you to take some time to reflect on how much you have achieved. So what I want you to do is make a list of all of your wins, big and small. And then I want you to find a way to celebrate. And for inspiration, you can watch this video on how do you reward yourself. The link is below the video and also in the cards. So you'll be able to kind of get some inspiration for how you can reward yourself. Now, after making a nice long list of your accomplishments, look back at any goals you set last year. You'll be thrilled to realize how much you actually achieved, and you'll likely see a number of things that got pushed aside. If so, I encourage you to reevaluate whether you still want to work towards these goals. In our reflection questions, we'll be able to talk about that. So, to make space for new plans, we often have to let go of what didn't work, what no longer fits, and what just doesn't matter to us anymore. There are goals I set that I just don't care about anymore. This can be helpful to discuss with a coach or a trusted friend or with us here in this live video. And if you need more guidance, we talked about letting go in this video, which you can find in the links below the video and also in the cards. It's just a good idea to think about what you can let go of, because then you're making space for new plans, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So let's reflect together. Let's start by talking about what went well last year. What went well last year for you? For me, if I talk about specifically, I mentioned earlier that when I talk about my YouTube channel, I had a lot of people participating in my live sessions. That was so much fun. I published a lot of videos. I wrote a lot of emails. I got a lot of interesting feedback, and hopefully I helped people improve their speaking skills. So those things were all really important to me for 2017. I was trying to build a community, share my philosophy, find people who can really benefit from the information that I've been sharing. So that's how I feel about my YouTube channel. If I think about other things that went well in my life, I practiced yoga every single day. I meditated every single day. I read more books than I had in years. That was really cool. And this year I have more goals on top of that. I created a lot of things, right? I have a lot of hobbies that are artistic, and I did a lot of creation outside of my business because I created a lot of content here on YouTube and other places. So it really did actually go well. If I focus on the good things, it makes me feel so energized and excited and happy to see what I can do in this new year. So I'd love to think about this. What habits, routines, or practices do you want to keep? So it's very important to think about your goals in terms of your habits, routines, and practices. Because when we think about a big goal, like something like I want to become fluent in English, I want to feel more confident when giving presentations, I want to share more information with my friends in English, I want to be able to reduce my accent in English, you got to think about how you're going to move towards those goals. So I really want you to think about what you can specifically do in order to achieve those goals. So you have to look backwards at the past year and think about what you actually did in order to achieve your goals in English or whatever kind of speaking skill, whatever goal that you may have in terms of what you achieved last year. So like I said, like a lot of my practices, like a daily yoga practice, required me to have the habit of trying to do even something that was a little bit short. For example, last year I traveled to New York for a week and I, was out of my normal routine. So I had to tell myself it's okay to even just do 5 minutes of yoga right before bed. because I was walking around a lot and I probably needed to stretch out afterwards. So I have to think about how these practices, these kind of routines, this fact that I was going to do it no matter what, even when it was hard, that was going to actually help me achieve my goal. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What habits and routines and practices did you really enjoy doing over the past year? Is there something that you really made a point of doing that made it like you made more progress because of that? If we want to use the YouTube channel, for example, maybe you showed up every week to a live video with me or somebody else. There's lots of people doing live videos on YouTube, and you participated and you've learned something new from gaining all that information week after week after week. Or maybe you made sure every single day to spend 5 or 10 minutes reviewing some vocabulary that you learned or practicing your speaking. I often talk about journaling as something that helps you improve both your speaking and your writing. Obviously, journaling is writing because it helps you access your vocabulary. So think about those practices that really did help you. So let's take a look at some things that went well and that you want to keep doing in this new year. Okay, so then you also have to take a moment and think about what didn't go well. So what really didn't go as well as you wanted it to in the past year? And a lot of things that people do with what didn't go well is they spend so much time thinking about how they didn't achieve their goals, how they didn't do this, how they didn't do that. But the reality is that it may just need more time. It's like I said earlier, you may just need more time in order to achieve your goals. So if you focus all of your energy on what didn't go well, then you aren't really going to be celebrating your progress and you're going to lose motivation and lose momentum. However, we do need to talk about what didn't go well. What habits, routines, or practices do I want to stop doing? I already mentioned that I didn't really want to spend as much time on my phone, reading Facebook groups, things that I just didn't feel like were super interesting for me, like things that weren't particularly it wasn't a good use of my time. It wasn't moving towards things I actually want in my life. And so I want to stop doing things like that. So for me, it's specifically, I want to stop reading other people's ideas, checking my email very first thing in the morning, because it really just isn't the best way to start my day. So now that you have a chance to think about it, what didn't go well and what habits, routines, or practices do you want to stop doing? I saw this taught as keep, ditch, and then we'll talk about the next part in another thing. But you always want to think about what worked and how you can integrate that into what you're going to do going forward. And then you want to think about what didn't work, what you can learn from that, and how you can think about that going forward as well. All right, so now let's take a look at the next step of our reflection. What would I like to change this year? So what would I like to change this year? So we're already starting to talk about this. What would I like to change this year? So this question, I want you to think about something that you want to do in order to change the way that things were happening. So what do I want to change? What are things that weren't going well? And what are things that I want to go well in the future? So like I said, I spent a lot of time last year reading things on the internet, reading articles, reading lots of emails, just things I didn't find that were super useful. And so I decided that I wanted to change them in order to move forward and be able to make changes in 2018. So I spend the first few hours of my day doing things that are really important to me, like reading, writing, kind of staying in my inspirational moments rather than trying to think about something that's like somebody else's ideas of what's important. I'm staying in what's important for me. In your own experience, improving your speaking skills, improving your English skills is, like we said earlier, there's this thing of complete overwhelm in terms of you feel overwhelmed by all the information that you have, and then you end up not doing anything with that information. So that's definitely a problem I've had, where I want to take information and then do something with it. If you guys remember, I had an interview with Jennifer of English Outside the Box, and she put this really well. At the end of the day, you want to be able to say something like, today I did this specific activity towards my goal of this specific goal. towards my overall goal of speaking English fluently. So when you make a specific action towards your goal, you feel so much better than just taking in all the information, because you may know all of the things you need to do in order to improve your speaking skills, in order to feel more confident, in order to improve your vocabulary or your listening skills. You may have all the information, but if you don't actually do the things, it's really not doing you a whole lot of good. So what would I like to change this year? The next question I want you guys to think about is, what new approaches would I like to try? So if I want to change my results, I need to think about what new approaches I would like to try. What new approaches would I like to try in 2018? So what new approaches would I like to try? It's nice to change things up. This is where I talk about with the new year, when you change into a new season, for example, maybe when you move into spring, you move into summer or fall, or even winter, although it's harder to start new goals in winter. I really encourage you to focus on how you can kind of find new inspiration as you move into that new season. It's really hard for us at times to kind of start things over when we're outside of our desired goals or our desired routines. But when you have a new season, a new year, a new thing that's happening in your life, it's easier to make big changes. And actually, one of the things that they say about making big changes is that you can actually, when you change apartments, you move to a new city, you start a new job, that's a good time to change a lot of different things, because you're kind of out of your normal routine. Because routines can be really helpful for you, but they can also be bad if you're finding that you're falling into the same routines and not changing things. So that's why I really would like to encourage you to think of some new approaches you would like to try. Okay, so here are my goals for 2018, and specifically how they can help you. So in 2018, I want to help more people take action and get results. So I want to help you communicate more effectively so that you can finally feel more confident about how you sound when speaking English. If this sounds good for you, I'd love to hear how I can help. And I'd also love to invite you to get even more resources. I've been sharing with my email community is that last year, I felt really overwhelmed by information. So if we talk about what didn't go well, I was really overwhelmed by information. And I felt like I was overwhelming people with information as well. So that's something that I really want to encourage you guys to maybe be a little more particular about the information you're taking in. Or if you really enjoy taking in all that information, I want you to make sure you're doing something with it. Like I said, think about how you can use all the information you learned in order to make progress towards your ultimate goal, instead of just kind of taking in all the information. So I've decided I personally want to cut down on the information that I'm sharing and make sure the information that I'm sharing is super valuable. So the way that I have organized this in order to help you guys, if you want to join, is that I actually have organized all of my information that I have on my website into these really, really useful email courses. So if you want to reduce your accent and speak English more clearly, I encourage you to sign up for my free email course at soundmorenatural.com. And if you want to communicate more effectively and connect in conversation, I encourage you to get my small talk guide, which is at englishwithkim.com/smalltalkguide. And once you're part of my email community, you'll start to receive even more guidance. Each week, I'll point you to a resource that will help you achieve your goal one step at a time. And of course, you can expect new videos that will motivate you to make even more progress on improving your accent and communication skills. But I really wanted to make it well organized, because it's very easy to feel like you're assaulted by information and it's hard to focus on what's really important towards your goals. So I would love to guide you through my free email resources if you'd like to join me. And so I would love to hear from you, either here in the chat right now or in the comments afterwards. What are you focusing on during this fresh new year of 2018? And what would you like to achieve this season? And if I can think of anything that will help you along your journey, I will point you in the right direction. So now it is your turn to let me know if you have any questions for me. Horacio says, would you give more examples with regards to the approaches question? Yeah, actually, that's a great question. And thank you for reminding me because as I was organizing this presentation, I forgot to mention this. So, something I'm really focusing on is trying to not be overwhelmed. And I've mentioned that a few times during this video, in trying not to overwhelm people. So the thing that I personally focus on is having a daily routine. And it's true that you don't necessarily have to do something every single day in order to make progress. You may make a weekly attempt towards making progress. But if you can squeeze 5 to 10 minutes of practice every single day, and then start kind of building that kind of 5 to 10 minutes of doing something really specific and targeted every single day, and do it for an entire quarter, for 90 days, or do it for 6 months, or do it for a year, you're going to have so much more progress over the course of the entire year and the course of the next 5 years. So I personally think an approach to learning English that I'm kind of advocating for is finding highly specific targets for 90 days, like I said, and only focusing on that for 90 days. And that's where it gets a little confusing with all of the information you could possibly receive. There's a lot of ways our attention can be attracted by information that we find because other people have different priorities. And actually, I've also linked the video, which is 3 reasons you're not making progress in English. And I talk about that a little bit more. I personally think the listening to all the information that's available is not actually helpful. I think that there's too much information, and I try to stay really limited in the information I let into my life, my multiple lives, into my life. So a new approach that I would try, specifically for you, because I think you do look for a lot of information, is if you're trying to improve your listening skills, like something, and I'll talk about this in the listening video that I want to do, but something that's important to do is decide what your goal is for listening. So decide what you're going to listen to, whether you're going to listen to the same person over and over again, or you're going to listen to, the same TV series or movie over and over again, but what are you going to listen for in that particular series? And so when I talk about accent reduction and how you can, I know you've asked me before how you can do it on your own, you actually want to be listening for which words are stressed in that particular sentence, and then only focus on the stressed words in this particular TV series. Or you can listen for a particular type of vocabulary and how it's pronounced, like everyone's favorite, phrasal verbs. Or you could listen specifically for vocabulary that you don't know. But you really want to change your approach to just listening to overall information and taking in information that is really specific. I think a big problem for a lot of people with improving their overall skills is that they're listening to everything at once, and you actually want to just listen to something specific towards your goals. In the video on how to find focus, I actually have a link to my website where I even give more examples of how to break down goals into 90 days. But one example I give there is how if you're going to travel and you want to just focus on information about travel for 90 days. Like, let's say you have a trip and you're going to, maybe you're visiting the US, or you're visiting a country in Europe, you're visiting London, you're even visiting a country where you'll need to speak English because they'll speak English to you, even though it's not a native English speaking country, anywhere you're going. But only focus on the vocabulary you need in order to achieve that travel goal for that 90 days, because then you'll feel so much more confident when you go there. I know there's a member of the community that had once mentioned that, he was visiting New York. So he was just trying to learn types of questions that he could ask people in order to start a conversation. Depending on your English level, you may want to think about how you can focus on vocabulary for doing things like going to the airport, or going to the hotel, or going to the hostel, wherever you're staying. You may need vocabulary for ordering food because you don't feel confident on that. I often talk about that even though I'm fluent in Spanish, I often feel uncomfortable ordering food because I feel like that vocabulary is not very strong for me. So that's what I mean by approaches. It would be instead of like kind of having this overall goal, I would break it into much more detailed steps that will actually move you towards that goal, rather than kind of saying like, I'm going to improve my travel vocabulary. Like, think about what you're actually going to do in order to improve your vocabulary regarding travel, or your listening skills regarding travel, or your conversation skills with a native English speaker. You really want to think about, how can I make that goal even more specific in order to actually make steps towards that goal. So that's what I would mean by new approaches. Another thing with new approaches, kind of changing it around, that's studying it on your own. I might try, for example, if you're studying with an app all the time and that's how you practice your English, then maybe stop using the app and go back to getting books from the library, right? Like things like that. Or, sign up for an online course or something like that. If you're always working with an English tutor or coach or something like that, you may want to do the same thing. Maybe you want to take an in-person class or go to a conversation club. So you just maybe want to see, if you feel like you're not making enough progress with the way you're doing things, then you want to think about how you can change the way you're doing things in order to make better progress going forward. And it's sometimes it's just good for variety. We have this expression in English, variety is the spice of life. Like when you change, we say change things up. When you change things up with your approach, you're much more likely to achieve your overall goal, because you're feeling that new burst of energy with how you're doing things. And that's why this is about, kind of having this new burst of energy in this new year and thinking about how you can use it in order to move forward. And I realized that it was much easier for people to make progress if they focused on something much more narrow every single day. So something that I do inside of my course, Stress Simplified, which is focused on word stress and sentence stress, is it's actually giving one particular drill per day, which is probably like 5 to 7 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, where that is the only thing you focus on for that day. Because when you only focus on that one thing and it starts to become part of the way that you actually speak, you're much more likely to actually remember it and move forward. Because when you're studying everything at once, kind of like when you're binge watching videos, you're binge watching on Netflix or binge watching on TV, like you're not actually making any steps forward by, kind of taking that information and putting it into practice. So I've started to really like drills. I've started to like challenges offering, because it kind of builds that momentum. So I've really focused on that kind of thing. How can you have a much smaller goal in order to make much bigger progress? So that might answer your question as well. I think that is good for today. So like I said at the end, if you have any questions, you can please be sure to leave a comment and let me know. I will, of course, be checking in with the questions. And I just want you guys to tell me what you are going to be focusing on during this fresh new year. Maybe you need some more time to think about it. And I want you to think about what you would like to achieve this season. So the more you tell me how I can help you, the much more likely I'm going to be able to help you going forward. So thank you guys so much for showing up for this live video. It was fun to reconnect with you guys at the beginning of 2018. I hope you found it helpful. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend who may be able to benefit as well. That really is the best way to support my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. But the more people that like and share my videos, the more people that can find them and the more I can actually make, because it enables me to keep making videos and keep supporting you guys in the ways that I can. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to hearing your feedback as you go through the year. If you have any questions about goal setting and improving, I talked about how we were going to talk about improving your speaking over this course of this year, and I really think you need to be more narrow about your goals. I hope I answered that, but we're focusing specifically on how you can actually find something you can do every single day. So I hope the resources I shared below will help you as well. Once again, I'm Kim from EnglishWithKim.com. I'm your guide to the essential conversation skills you need to sound more natural in English. Have a good one. Goodbye.